Suzanne's.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. I am Ace, and you're watching another episode of Sportsminute. Tonight, I am joined by my co-host for the evening. Let's welcome in the first one, Mr. Big Game James Gonzalez. How are you doing tonight, my man?
I'm good. In this summer of trying to find some interesting topics, I think we found some.
I think so too. All right, and then of course, welcome in Mr. Crispy Bacon. Crispy, how are you doing tonight, my man?
Doing good. NHL had their draft, and MLB's fixing to have their All-Star break here in about a week or two.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, dude. That All-Star break for MLB that snuck up in a hurry. Like that like when I started looking at the Braves schedule, I'm like, holy crap, it's already the All-Star break here in like 2 weeks. I was like, holy, that really snuck up really fast, really came up in a hurry. But speaking of, the MLB All-Star break and things like that, our first topic for the night is when we talk about MLB right now, would you say that because of the start of the season, everybody had extremely high hopes for the New York Mets because, of Verlander and Scherzer? Everybody talked about how much of a dominant, pitching rotation the Mets were going to have. Verlander has not been great this year at all. He's got like a 4.50 ERA. He's been getting knocked around. Scherzer hasn't been spectacular. That whole lineup has not been great. Escobar got traded. So I'm like looking at this, and so my question is, are the Mets the biggest disappointment so far this season? And James, I'll start with you because I know the other team. So before you go, I know Big B, he can't be here with us tonight, but I know Big B was one that came out and said, well, debatable because the Padres are right on that cusp also because of the names that they went out and got. So James, what's your thought? Is it indeed the Mets that's the biggest disappointment?
Man, you can have both 1A, 1B. I know that's the conservative answer to say, but when you look at the Mets, they've had some injury issues. The Padres haven't. The Mets, Alonso's been out. Remember, Diaz got hurt, their closer in the WBC, celebrating. So right away, you knew you were going to be behind. We figured they had enough to play with. They had enough players. They went out and got some good players and had some already there. But it's almost like the Mets way of doing things. They have a lot of things going well for them. There's a lot of expectations, and then in that number one market of media, it's going to all blow up if you do wrong or lose. I know the owner came out, Steve Cohen, and mentioned, "Hey, we're going to do whatever it takes to win. I might make some moves if we're not winning at the deadline." He said, "I would." You don't have an owner usually do that.
Yeah.
But he's taking priority, and he lives and dies with this team. You see it all the time on Twitter. He's not shy to call out the team and take whatever you want with that. That's just him. Meanwhile, the Padres, it seems like they have an abundance of everything: offense, starting pitching, and then they have a really good closer with Hader. But their pitching sort of can have a letdown, especially their bullpen had cost them so many games. And then when you think about it, their offensive lineup should be awesome. When you have a core four like that, and then the rest of the lineup that they all should be scoring so many runs a game. And that's what was expected. Now, I think they have one of the worst runners in scoring position averages. Worse on base percentages. Any runs they score is like a solo home run or a pass ball or a wild pitch or an error. It's nothing offensive. It's offensive how offensive they are. That's what I see with San Diego. They were supposed to build on what they were doing last year, defeating the Dodgers, slaying the Dragon. They were supposed to get back to that. Looking at the standings right now, they're 11 games out first. The Mets are 17 out. That's because Atlanta's that good. 37 wins for San Diego, 36 for the Mets. And what's funny, too, today, both of their managers, Showalter for New York, San Diego for Bob Melvin for San Diego, both got ejected on review plays that didn't go their way. That's just that's how things are going for both of those teams, that both managers tonight got ejected on the review calls, which you're not supposed to argue whatsoever. You knew in both situations that they were going to come out and say something, even though they were not supposed to. The heat's on both. The thing I'll mention about the Padres, too, they lost their TV contract rights with Bally Sports. So the feeling is, okay, we're going to get that contract money from Bally Sports, and we're going to have all these players signed until certain years. Well, now that's in doubt after the season. They're going to have to come up with something, and it might be a real disaster. So I would say 1A, 1B with the Mets and the Padres right now.
Yeah, it is really close, but I think that the expectations, because of how well the Mets did last year when they won 101 games, that everybody had that expectations of, oh, this pitching staff got better. Like, people actually felt like this pitching staff for the Mets got better because they went out and got Verlander. The problem is like we were saying before, Verlander has not been great at all. But again, the Padres' whole pitching staff, they haven't been great. Their bullpen hasn't been great. The Padres haven't been scoring runs like they should be. The Mets haven't really been scoring runs like they should be. And now Scherzer is even saying that he's almost willing to opt out of his no trade clause. And so at what point, if you're like a Mets fan or Padres fan, do you start to panic? Now
you should have. No, they a lot. Well, here in San Diego, I know people have been panicking for the last month.
I think
just because they knew, okay, we have everybody back. Tatis came back from his suspension. Nobody's injured. They don't have that excuse that the Mets have. So they've been panicking here for a while.
Yeah, and if it shows you, and look, I'm not trying to be biased, but if it shows you, like, when a team has a loaded roster and they can be resilient. Okay, Atlanta has 3 of their starting pitchers out, and they're still managing to win games. And so and I'm looking at the Padres roster, and I feel like the Padres roster is almost just as good as Atlanta's roster. If you look at their lineup, they're supposed to have just as much skill. Technically they are. Now the Mets, a little debatable. I'm not going to say that the Mets lineup, from top to bottom, is supposed to be as good as Atlanta's, because I don't particularly see that. But their pitching staff, I feel like the Mets would have the little bit of advantage maybe with the pitching staff wise. Again, so when I talk about disappointment, I'm not disagreeing with you saying, the whole 1A and 1B thing, but I probably do go with that the Mets are right there. That the Mets are probably the biggest disappointment so far this season. Crispy, what's your thoughts? Who's the biggest disappointment so far this season? Is it indeed the Mets?
I would say the Mets. Didn't they have, or maybe it was the Padres too? I can't remember, but one of the highest payrolls in
The Mets
MLB.
have the highest. They have
Okay,
the highest in all of baseball.
okay, then that's probably why they're probably the most, I guess, dysfunctional. For the Padres, I think they're more of like I wouldn't say a fairy tale, but like, they're up and coming, sort of. They're one of the teams everybody wants to root for. And I think right now the Mets are, because of their high payroll, that we've seen it in other sports, when you have that kind of money, or high enough money, it doesn't work out.
The problem is the Mets are paying Verlander it's like $42 million a year at 40 years old. You're paying a 40-year-old pitcher $42 million a year when you're thinking that Verlander is still going to be in the fountain of youth and be doing what he's done for years.
That was a risk, and Houston didn't want to do that.
Exactly.
And that was so good by Houston. Let me mention one thing. I'm happy Chris mentioned this with San Diego. They're one of the fairy tale teams, and I think Chris put that perfectly. And no, disrespect to any Padre fans out there, San Diego people outside the window, if anybody can hear me. Look, this team was really bad the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
Never did anything. Never spent money. They have a new owner now, and they went for it since 2020. They made the playoffs then last year, and they talked a big game. And they were young, obnoxious, saying, "Look at us now." And now they're starting to fall. They bit off more than they can chew. And it's been great, I think, for teams like the Dodgers and the Giants, just to say, hey, I thought you were that good, but you're not really us. You're not really a stable. You're just some punk kids, saying all this and all that, but really, you're what you've always been, and that's just unfortunate. If the Padres weren't so flamboyant and arrogant, I think I would feel more sympathy for the Padres and the players and the fans, but they built this. When they put that picture of Kershaw crying on the scoreboard after they beat the Dodgers, the one time they beat the Dodgers this year, the rest of the times they lost. They're 1-5. When I saw that on the board, I said, wow, karma's going to bite them in the you-know-what, and it's happened this year.
It's okay to be confident, but you don't want to be too confident.
Mm-hmm.
You do. And the thing is like, you can look at any team out there and say how, if a team is really, really good, okay? So you have teams like the Rays, a really, really good team. The Rays are really good. The Braves, a really good team. The Orioles, a young, good team. The Diamondbacks, a young, good team. But when you look at all these teams that have been consistently good on a basis, the one thing is even as a diehard Braves fan that I am, I will look at the Braves and I'll tell you exactly what they need, because if they have a weakness, teams will eventually expose it, and so they will find your weakness on any good team there is. And so you can't get overconfident and be like, yeah, we're this good, so we're going to go ahead and stroll through everybody in the playoffs, make the World Series, and win it all. Case in point, the Dodgers last year, they won like 107 games or something like that, a ridiculous number. And they lost in the first playoff series last season that they played. They didn't even make it to the second round. So it doesn't matter how good you are. It really doesn't. And I think that comes to show you that you can't buy championships. You can't.
It's how good. It's how good are you the next game?
Not
this game you just played, but the next game.
I think people have this mantra and this philosophy that and owners and GMs and whatnot. They come out and they go, okay, we'll take every big name we can find, and we'll buy them. We'll put them on our roster. We'll give them what they want, and so that way we know that we're gonna buy that championship, because we know if we have a lot of big names, we're gonna win games. More often than not, these teams end up losing and not winning the big game. Why? Because there's too much superstar talent on the team. Egos don't mesh like that. And I think with the Padres, that's what's happening here. There's too many egos in one, and it's not meshing. And it's a lot of young kids, and it's not working out. So I know at some point, you're right, James, when you said, yes, people have started to panic. They absolutely have. And in San Diego, panic. If you're a Mets fan, it's time to panic. And so you have to look at these teams and say, are they going to be buyers? Probably not. It's going to be hard, because what are you going to get rid of if you're trying to buy? We already saw the Mets get rid of Escobar. So obviously it's kind of showing you that maybe they're not buyers. Maybe they're actually willing to sell, because they're like, okay, we've already dug ourselves in a hole. We're 17 games out of first place. And so getting out of this 17-hole deficit is not going to be, well, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's definitely not going to be easy.
Right.
And J Mac saying, you can't say that to me. And he's also saying, I can buy a trophy and have whatever I want engraved on it. You're right. You can buy a trophy if you want, but if you buy superstars, a lot of times it doesn't pan out.
I think maybe one superstar. You don't need a full team worth, but you need that maybe one. I wouldn't say a superstar, but that one player.
Yeah, and I feel like young talent is kind of the way to go. You wanna get that. Look at the freaking Rays, man.
Every year they even make trades. They finally signed somebody long term, a couple of players, but even
like
with
Franco, Franco. Yep.
all these years, they had all these great players, and they end up going somewhere else, but they still win. They scout the best. It seems like I'm gonna book this right now. The World Series is going to be Atlanta and Tampa Bay.
That'd be cool.
Oh wow!
Now, it sounds like the Rays are like, minus the championships, but the Patriots, in that the Patriots were not afraid to cut players, release players, sign players. If it didn't work out or if it will work out, they weren't afraid.
I don't know.
I'm not saying the championship part. I'm saying the player management. Like, they're not afraid to sign certain players if they need to, or cut.
No, I get it. So James, that's a good call. You're calling Tampa and Atlanta right now.
I don't see anything else. By the way, the Yankees threw a perfect game tonight in Oakland. They won 11-0. I'm getting the numbers right now, but they shut out the A's 11-0 in Oakland. Domingo Germán gets his fifth win in the perfect game.
Oh wow,
that's crazy.
24th. His 24th perfect game.
Nice. Okay. Well, congratulations to that.
9 strikeouts out of all the outs.
All right. Well,
it had to be a Yankee.
Had to be a Yankee. All right. Well, going on to our next topic. Our next topic, I wanted to hit on the NFL, because we know that right now the NFL is really cracking down on player gambling, and now they're putting in this gambling ban, and we already know that Isaiah Rodgers off the Colts this year is looking at a season-long suspension. Ridley last year got that season-long suspension. He's coming back, and the NFL's really cracking down now, and they're like, look, there's going to be more harsh punishments if you indeed go and gamble on games. And I think what they're trying, and I know this started, back with the whole Pete Rose thing, and I think that they're worried about the the Tim Donnelly thing, with people throwing games and the referee officiating one way or another because he's betting on games. You got other people betting on games or whatever. Now Big B left a comment to where Big B said it didn't really matter to him, honestly, whether players bet on games or not. So, James, like, what's your thought? Because my thing is like, I guess if you're not, betting on your own team, I don't really see a difference in that. But I don't know, James, what's your thoughts?
This is the NFL's worst outcome out of all this. Is like, hey, you knew this was going to happen when you got the sponsorships from all the betting sites.
Yeah.
When you got a team in Las Vegas, my Raiders, you just knew something might pop up one day. And I'm surprised the Raider hasn't been caught yet. Or maybe in these reports of names, it'll be a Raider that comes out tomorrow. But we just knew this was going to happen eventually. It happened last year, and now it's happening to more guys. It's impossible to try to get everyone on the same page about it because everybody wants greed. Everybody wants some type of money back, even players. And they can have, like Rodgers, they can have somebody do it for them. Just like what happened, I think, with Ridley last year, or he did it when he was injured. But then there are players trying to do it, but not put their name on it. It was on somebody else's phone, but they're giving them like tips or bets or something like that. You just knew this was going to be a problem when the NFL and all these sports brought in gambling and legalized it, basically. You just knew this was going to happen. And I'm looking at Rodgers here, and the 100 bets, almost 100 bets were put in. $25 to $50 range were put under the account of the associate of Rodgers. So it's not him, but it's an associate. But the NFL won't allow players to bet on other sports when they're on NFL property or inside team facilities. So you can't bet on your sport at all. And then you can't bet on another sport when you're on facilities or property. So I know the NFL is trying to educate the players now, but it has to be a stricter way of doing things. But it's impossible because everybody has their own phone, their own laptop. I mean, what are you going to do? Tell a player, during the season, you can only use this phone, and it's given by the team, and it bans.
I was going to say, do you like usage?
No, I get it. And J-Mac makes a great point. He's like, so you bet and we'll suspend you for a year, but you beat your wife and we'll let you play.
Yeah.
It's like, so I get that the NFL is trying to crack down on it, but get their priorities straight. What is worse? Is beating your wife worse or gambling worse? Obviously, beating your wife is way worse. So why not suspend somebody for a long time for doing that as opposed to somebody gambles on a game and you get a year-long suspension because you're gambling? It's exactly like you said, James. The problem is the NFL talks about DraftKings all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They talk about sports booking at the casinos.
Yeah.
If you're going to sit here and you're going to talk about DraftKings and sports booking and fantasy football, that sometimes people go in on fantasy football and they charge money to play fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next? Is the NFL going to say that the players can't play fantasy football because they're paying money for fantasy football, or they can't play fantasy football because it could, I don't know. It's a disgrace to the game or whatever. Who knows? But some of the things that they're saying to me is kind of ridiculous. What's up, Isaiah? So
I think one part in that is said no daily fantasy. If I remember that, reading that.
The what?
No daily fantasy football. They can't even do that.
But honestly, who cares?
I think they should. It's like you can't bet on football. The sport you're playing it. The sport you're playing. You can't bet on your team or the opponents you're facing, but you can bet on NBA. Hockey, but it has to be controlled. Like somebody has to monitor.
Let me ask you though, what harm does it do?
Nothing. Not to my knowledge. Nothing.
Well, Tex Pete Rose kind of messed it up for everyone. So automatically you have that suspicion in your mind if you're the NFL, and you have to put these punishments down. But the thing is now, and this is my last thing about it, the NFL's too deep into the advertisements and the money they're making every year, so they can't get out of that. So one day it's going to get really out of hand. They might ban gambling again, and the Raiders would have to move out of Las Vegas.
Right.
Oh, it's going to be a mess if it gets worse.
Oh yeah, it will be. And J Mac, I want to give a shout out to your Spurs for drafting Wimba. So, so the Spurs got a hell of a player in Wimba. So,
yeah.
Congrats on getting Wimba. All right. So James, you're right with that. Eventually, if they want it to stop, they're just gonna have to basically just say nope, no more. We're not gonna advertise DraftKings. We're not gonna advertise anything like that. We're gonna just stop doing it. And I think if they want to put a stop to it, that's the only way that they truly can stop it. So, moving on. So J-Mac saying, is the NFL really trying to convince us that there isn't guys making sideline bets during the game? Oh, I'm sure there probably is.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to our next topic here. We're going to talk about I might change around the topics. The topics are the same, but I might get them in the wrong order, but it's fine. Our next topic that I want to talk about was Chris Paul actually going to the Warriors, which I will say that to me was a shocker, because if you remember on Sports Minute last time, we thought that Chris Paul getting traded essentially meant he was going to end up on one of the LA teams. We thought he was going to end up with the Clippers, or we thought for sure he was going to probably end up with the Lakers. I saw it coming. I think everybody saw it coming. I don't think anybody saw Chris Paul going to the Warriors. And I think that to me, when we mentioned that, I was like, oh, wow. Didn't see that coming. Chris Paul to the Warriors. That actually got the Warriors to be a heck of a lot better. And Big B left his comment about it and basically said that means that if the Warriors can stay 85 to 100% healthy this season, that kind of has to make them as one of the favorites for the finals. Because it's kind of that Chris Paul effect, I guess that people are saying. But James, what's your thoughts on Chris Paul going to the Warriors to play alongside Stephon Curry and Klay Thompson?
What? That was my reaction that day. Last Thursday, I believe it was, or Wednesday. I was like,
yeah.
Huh? They don't need a point. They don't need a point guard. They don't need an old player. They need to get younger. What are they? This isn't real, right? Like, I literally asked a bunch of people, I'm like, is this true? Like, is this? They said, yeah. Okay. I think Chris Paul maybe has accepted the fate that James Harden will have to one day. And that is to accept a bench role. And, you can knock off minutes, but you could be as productive. That's what I think. Maybe that's the reason, this will work in San Francisco with the Warriors. But man, I think this was a good move for the Warriors in this case, because Jordan Poole whom was awful in the playoffs.
Terrible.
He had a 4-year, $128 million deal. Moving in, what was it? This season, not last year, but this season. So that big deal was going to come for Poole, and he's not that player. He's not that guy. Chris Paul was due about $31 million, so you get relief with that, but he has nothing guaranteed after that. So it's a good move for the Warriors. It has financial flexibility. The Warriors also, though, they need to figure out, you're going to have Chris Paul, that's fine on the bench, to have the second guy. Because I can't see him out there unless you have Curry and Thompson just running around on screens and Chris Paul delivers them the ball to shoot threes. Okay, that's fine and dandy. But then what about the second unit? So that's where Andrew Wiggins comes in. You know, he had some off-court trouble half of last year. He came back, but it was too late. He wasn't in rhythm like he was the season before, which they won. So they got to figure out, with that cap space, with the flexibility there, how they can get their bench better and that Chris Paul can fit that bench better. That's going to be the big thing because, like I said, that didn't make sense. And I eventually knew he wasn't going to go to the Clippers. The way he left the Clippers, it wasn't in good terms. And I knew there was going to be no reunion. I knew he wanted to get back at the Clippers, and he tried with the Rockets, he tries with the Suns, and now he goes to the Warriors. So I know he's just trying to get back at the Clippers or the Lakers. He's trying to get back at all of them. But Jordan Poole, it's funny. He goes to a Wizard team that really has no direction. And so Jordan Poole now, he's almost like when Kyle Kuzma was there, but he's going to leave probably. They don't have a really solid roster. It's just a bunch of young guys, and then Jordan Poole, who makes all this money, so he's going to expect the ball. It's really a bad fit for both teams. Like, it was a trade only to create cap space for the Warriors. That's the only reason this happened. There's some second-round picks that moved in this deal, but that doesn't matter. That was only just flexibility for the Warriors here.
I do feel, though, that Chris Paul, if you bring in a veteran like Chris Paul, yes, he's going to be a role player because you have Curry and Thompson and
Draymond. I forgot all about Draymond Green.
Yeah, and Draymond Green. So my thing about it is, though, is that, yeah, you're bringing in Chris Paul because you want him to be able to run that second team. That's why you bring him in, because you're like, I want Chris Paul to be able to run that second team off the bench. So that's why you bring him in, because you do need that veteran leadership as a second team, and he's going to be that leader on the second team. So I see why the Warriors did it, but why also relieving a whole bunch of cap space from Jordan Poole. So, Crispy, what is your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we were all, like everybody said, we were shocked at the move. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I know he's had a bad reputation, and not in all places, but especially with the Clippers. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think no one expected it, and maybe that's the way he wanted it. But I think the Warriors are a favorite right now.
Well, I think essentially, though, and James, and I know you're a Clippers fan, but I think essentially back when, Chris Paul played on the Clippers with Blake Griffin, and then I would say that the Clippers just kind of ran into a string of bad luck, and what I mean by that is because it seemed like every year they would get in the playoffs. Either Chris Paul was hurt or Blake Griffin was hurt.
Don't remind me.
One of them was out. And I will tell you, if that Clippers team was fully healthy, I think they could have won a championship. They could have, had that team been fully healthy. But the problem is, again, they couldn't stay healthy.
They're cursed. I just know it, and you see it with Paul and Leonard, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't even mention Draymond Green. You know, he opted out of his deal, which
But
I think
they worked it out.
Oh, they did.
I think so.
Okay, because I know he opted out the $28 million deal. And
I could be wrong, but I thought they did. But yeah, I could be wrong.
Would give him that money. That's just for Draymond Green.
Yeah.
No way. Like, no.
Because Draymond Green's not getting any younger.
Right.
He's not getting any younger. And let's face it, Draymond Green's not going to be a guy that's going to get you 16 points every night or 20 points or whatever. He's not going to be that guy. He's going to be your rebounder. He might be your little bit of assist guy, but he's not going to get you a ton of points.
The leader after fouls every year.
So after a while, you have to start going young, and Draymond Green is not that guy. So I'm riding the ship with you guys right there. I completely agree, but I do think that this makes the Warriors a better team. I really do. The Warriors, to me, won this trade without question. Jordan Poole going to Washington means absolutely nothing, because if you ask me, Washington's going to potentially, I will say that Washington's going to probably be the worst team in the NBA next year. They have nothing. They have zero. They have zilch. But just think though. I guess we can sit here and say that, but then think last year with the Brooklyn Nets, when we thought essentially, we're like, oh, the Nets, they're never going to hang on. They're never going to do it. And they ended up hanging on.
That's the thing though with the Mets. I mean, the Nets, the other borough. They already had a great record at the time they made those.
They did.
And then they made two good trades. So they got a lot of depth back and a lot of veteran players. The Wizards, what they've done is
they got nothing.
It's like draft picks and then nobody's.
Yeah. So that Bradley Beal trade, that killed them. That was over. And now getting Jordan Poole to where you're essentially saying, well, I guess if we have a star on our team, I guess that star is now Jordan Poole.
His championship experience.
Huh?
And free.
Like all they have is, you can say about Jordan Poole, championship experience coming off the bench.
Yeah, that's it. That's all they have. But if you look at it right now, Jordan Poole is their guy. Like, that's what you would have to say right now, because that's what they have. Jordan Poole. That's their guy. So, and how far is Jordan Poole going to take you? Not far at all. So, Washington's going to be a complete mess. They're going to probably be the worst team in the NBA.
And free agency starts Friday.
I can't wait for that.
Now, I get what you're saying, Chris, that
No,
free agency starts Friday. My thing is, and no disrespect to any Washington fan out there, nobody's going to Washington right now with that mess. With everything that they have created, nobody's going to Washington.
Usually guys that they want to get a payday, like Bruce Brown, maybe someone like that. Not him, but players out there like on a good team that are role players. They feel like they can do more. So they go to a bad team, but they make so much more money. And they realize, I think I made a mistake. I like winning more than I do losing.
I want to be paid. I don't want to be winning.
Payday's nice, but
I shouldn't be at home. I shouldn't be in Cancun in April.
No, it makes logical sense.
Unless I'm winning, then I don't mind going to Cancun. But
in June or July, yeah.
Yeah.
But sticking on the NBA now, because that is essentially our next topic. So sticking on the NBA side, with guys that we've talked about now. Obviously, in this next topic, we're not going to mention like a Jordan Poole. We're not going to mention a Chris Paul. We're not going to mention like a Klay Thompson or somebody like that. But our next topic is, if you had to start an NBA franchise right now, and you had to pick one guy to start that franchise and be like, yep, this is my guy. This is my first pick of a guy that's currently in the NBA. Who are you taking? James, who's your guy?
Okay, 1A, 1B. I got to go with Ben Simmons and Zion Williamson. I'm totally kidding.
Yeah, that's why I didn't say anything, because I knew that was going to be a joke.
I'll take the two laziest players in the league and do whatever. Right now, oh man, are we basing this on just age or just now?
Anybody in the NBA that currently plays in the NBA right now?
Just how you see it.
Because it's crazy. You go age, or you can go who just won. I guess Jokic, because he can do just about everything, and he's a leader. He's not selfish. He's got a different mindset, like Giannis does, where it's not just about him; it's about the team. The fact that Jokic, he just won the title, and he's like, "Oh, good, I get to go home now."
Yeah, he's like, I want to go home.
I love that. It's like, okay, I'll see you guys next year. I gotta go now. We accomplished our goal. See you later. I'll be right back. We'll be right back for it. I know Giannis wanted to do that, so I go Jokic and then Giannis.
Because that just sounded like he was just tired. You know, like he played all those games and he's like, I'm tired. I just want to go home.
I mean, he didn't put it out on Twitter like LeBron or Kevin Durant would. He's like, literally, I'm here talking to you. I'm done. I don't even want to go to the parade. He ended up going to the parade. But, I go with Jokic just because he has qualities you want in a leader like Giannis does. And you don't see that with a lot of the young players. I know a lot of the picks would be like, hey, I want to go with Luka or John Morant or Joel Embiid or Tatum. But there's just something different about all those guys where it's like, hey, you really can't depend on them to say the right things and sometimes do the right things.
Yeah, and you know what, James? And honestly, in my opinion about it, if you're Isaiah, that is the one of the dumbest things I have read. But
What is it?
what
What do you say?
he said, Austin Reeves.
You know what though? You know, not
He
like
could be-
first, but I would want, if he gets more established, like in 3 or 4 years, and he's doing what he's doing now, that's not too far off.
But not right now. If I'm starting a franchise right now, I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, Austin Reeves is my guy.
But in 3 or 4 years, if he continues to do what he's doing, which I love his game, I hate that he's a Laker for now. I wish he goes to the Spurs. I want him to go to San Antonio.
To the Spurs.
I would love that. I want to see Isaiah cry. He's crying tonight because the A's gave up the perfect game. But I want to see Austin Reeves go with Wamba. I think that would be a nice duo.
That would be interesting.
I don't think he stays with the Lakers.
I hope
I
not.
don't either.
But going back to what you were saying, if you were to ask me, in all honesty, I don't even think it's close. Like, if I had to pick somebody right now to start a franchise with, it's not even close. It's the Joker. It's Jokic, and maybe a close second. Maybe if I was gonna say it's close, maybe Giannis. Other than that, though, I don't even know about that, because right now, just the Joker's on another planet at this moment. He is absolutely on another planet, and I don't even think it's close. So Crispy, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going with the Joker. I mean, yeah, you know, for many years you could go, you know, LeBron, Dirk, but those two are, Dirk's not playing, LeBron's winding down his career. There's other players that were probably in that category, but I would have to say the Joker would be.
Yeah. Now, if you had asked me a couple of years ago, it probably would have been Giannis. But
Yep.
because of how much Joker's gotten better,
Mhm.
it's got to be Jokic, Giannis, and then and I know people will probably
LeBron.
what?
LeBron.
No, hell no. Right now, that dude's not even in my top 5 that I would start an NBA franchise with. Right now, he's not even in my top 5.
I just want to win.
Uh,
I just want to win. If I know I'm going to get the calls or the benefit of the doubts, I want the guy who will make it happen.
I'm still not taking that dude. I'm not doing it. I'd rather go with the Joker. I'd go with Giannis. I'd probably go with Kevin Durant. Honestly, I probably would. Hate it or not, Curry is probably my top 5 because that dude is probably the greatest Pierce three-point shooter I've seen of all time. That dude can just freaking shoot threes like nobody I've ever seen. So Curry would definitely be up there. And number 5, if he continues to get better, I'm gonna go with Devin Booker. He's close. He's close. So that's the way I see it right now. Hate my top 5. That's fine. I don't care. But I'm sticking to my top 5.
Look at Isaiah's. Oh, God.
Dude, those guys, what?
They're up and coming. They're up and coming, but they're not here yet. I don't mind that top. I wouldn't mind not Dante, but the other 3. I want to see him do well.
Yeah, but I'm not going to start a franchise with them. They're not going to be my first picks to start a franchise with.
If they're cheap.
I don't even think I would do that, honestly. The first thing I would do is get that veteran presence. That veteran guy I need, that I know. So I'd go for my veteran guy first. So I would be like, okay, my veteran guy, Joker, or Giannis. And then after that, I'm like, okay, I got my veteran now. Now I can bring in a few of these young guys to learn from my veteran guy if I needed to go cheap. And that's how I would build my franchise. Now, Isaiah, you're saying heart, and I get that, but heart is going to only get you so far. You got to have talent too.
I was going to say heart, talent.
I'm sorry, I thought he meant Josh Hart. I'm sorry.
Josh Hart.
I mean, he's a nice bench player, but he's not going to be like a first pick.
What? All right. So, going into our Crispy, did you answer that question? Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah,
right?
I did. Yeah,
you did. I was actually surprised, and Crispy, don't take this the wrong way. I'm kind of surprised that because you're a Dallas fan, I thought you were going to say Luka.
Well, in some aspects he would be, but I wouldn't say he's a total leader. I think he needs to grow a little bit.
Yeah, but I honestly thought, I was like, okay, Crispy's a Dallas fan. He's going to go with Luka. And that was like my first thought I was like, yep, he's going with Luka.
And that's why I said a few years ago, for Dallas, you probably would have said like Dirk or somebody like that. But
now, James, would you have, and let me ask you this, would you have at any point think about a young Kawhi? A young Kawhi. Would you have started a franchise with a young Kawhi?
I would. I think he leads by example more than his words. I think that's obvious. So I wouldn't mind having players learn from that. So yeah, younger Kawhi, hell yeah, because he doesn't have the injuries yet. He doesn't have the uncle in his ears telling him what to do and messing up the Spurs and the Clippers and sitting out games. So yeah, the younger Kawhi, hell yeah.
And I'm kind of glad you said that because originally, when this topic came about, I was actually going to say a young Kawhi. I would have went with him to start a franchise with, but because think about Think about him with the young Kawhi on the Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
He made that Spurs team so much better as a young Kawhi. But once he kind of grew up, he kind of transformed into that player, and then he started listening to people he shouldn't have listened to. And I'm not going to say that killed his career, but it kind of made it to where I'm like, okay, I would not start a franchise with this guy.
Not anymore, no.
Now going into our final topic of the evening, is it time for the NFL and potentially so right now I'll just go with the NFL. Is it time for them to start looking at a realignment division wise? Because I know people have come out in the past that said demographically some ways that it's set up doesn't make sense. And if you were trying to put teams together that were closer, you would have to do some changing around. So James, do you think it's time for NFL to start looking at maybe possibly changing divisions up?
No, I like them the way they are. I mean, if the MLB hasn't done theirs, I think the NFL should keep it the way they have it. The last time they'd done any realignments was 2002 when Houston was brought in. Seattle was moved to the NFC West from the AFC West.
Yeah,
and that was kind of
Tampa, and then Tampa was moved from the North.
and then don't forget, but before that, Arizona was in the NFC East, and then I think Carolina.
Yeah. If you don't remember though, in the NFL, Tampa was in the North because they were in the North with Green Bay and Minnesota and Chicago and Detroit, and they were moved out of the North.
And then the Falcons were in the NFC West, even though they're on that coast.
Yeah.
That was the weirdest thing. I mean, the Braves were too back in the day. That is just weird how things were. But now you have more teams, and now you have more settings. Now, guys, the one I sent in the chat, I like this. The thing is, it's almost like what they do in preseason with these matchups. And I remember what Big B was mentioning is like, hey, if you can keep the rivalry games still there, do it. But with these new divisions I sent you here, I guess I'll run through them real quick. Seattle, San Francisco, the Rams, the Chargers would all play in the Pacific Division. Rocky Mountains would be Arizona, the Raiders, Denver, and Dallas, even though they don't have Rocky Mountains in Texas. The Southwest Division, Houston, New Orleans, Atlanta, Tennessee. I get that. Midwest Division would be intriguing because you have all the NFC Central teams other from Detroit, but you add Kansas City. Then you have a Northeast Division, which is both New York team or all three New York teams and New England. Mid Atlantic is Washington, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. So you get the rivalries there still. Southeast, you get all the Florida teams with Carolina. Central, you get Ohio, the Battle of Ohio, and Detroit and Indianapolis. And it's still weird seeing Indianapolis in the AFC South, even though they're, Indiana. They're north, but they're in the South there. I remember that was another change they had to do in 2002 with Houston coming in. But I don't want anything changing. I think we have enough problems and stupidity in the NCAA with college football and all the realignments there.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with that ever again in the NFL. I don't want expansion to London or Mexico or even Canada. I don't want any of that crap. I just want it to stay the way it is.
I don't think you have to worry about Canada. But
Correct.
Probably not. All right. Crispy, is it time for them to look at a realignment?
No. I think you're good the way it is right now. Sadly, I think you'll probably see expansion maybe 5 years or so, 10 years. But hopefully things kind of remain the same. We've seen that college football is chaotic. It's very chaotic, and it's like, okay, last year this team was in this conference, now they're in this conference, and it's just confusing.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that, but we are pretty much out of time here, so we're at that point now to where we're going to go ahead and get your final thoughts for everything. So, James, if you want to go ahead and give me your final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I can't wait to see the programming for C2C coming up. Don't forget Four Bros and all the other shows coming up soon here on Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. Stay tuned for all of that.
All right, and Crispy, any final thoughts for you?
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching and tuning in. A lot of great shows coming up soon, and I believe On Deck is this weekend, and then also this weekend, Money in the Bank pay-per-view for WWE. We'll be back to cover it Tuesday, so should be a fun week of shows.
All right, so we definitely want to thank everybody for watching. We have some exciting stuff coming up on C2C. Speaking of realignment, we have a lot of realignment going on right now with the C2C that we're in the process of figuring it out, and we're actually bringing some old shows back and bringing some shows back that we've been missing for a while. So with that, we hope everybody has a fantastic evening, and we will see you guys later. With that, have a good night.